The wind howled across the Montana Territory as Temperance Ward clutched her father's pocket watch, the only memento she had left of him since the fever took him 3 weeks ago. It was 1876, and the journey west had claimed not just her father, but her dreams of a new beginning. Now, alone on the vast prairie with night falling and her wagon wheel broken beyond repair, she faced a choice between desperation and death. Temperance's honey-blonde hair whipped around her face as she surveyed the barren landscape. The stagecoach that had passed her hours ago refused to stop, the driver eyeing her broken wagon with disinterest. She was 22 years old and had never felt more abandoned by God and humanity alike. "Stupid wheel," she muttered, kicking at the splintered wood. Her dress, once a respectable navy calico, was now streaked with dust and sweat. She'd been traveling for nearly 2 months from Boston, following her father's plan to start anew after her mother's passing the previous year. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Temperance knew she couldn't repair the wagon before nightfall. With trembling hands, she unhitched her exhausted mare, Penny, and retrieved her bedroll from the wagon bed. "Just you and me tonight, girl," she whispered to the horse, stroking its damp neck. "We'll figure this out come morning." As darkness fell, Temperance made a small fire from the sparse kindling she could gather. She'd camped before on the journey west, but always within the safety of her wagon or near other travelers. Tonight, the vast openness of the prairie felt like a threat. The crackle of her fire did little to ease her nerves as shadows danced across the tall grass surrounding her modest camp. Every sound made her jump: the distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of wind through the grass, the occasional snort from Penny. Temperance had just laid out her bedroll when she heard the distinct rhythm of approaching hoofbeats. Her heart hammered in her chest as she reached for her father's old revolver, tucked away in her travel bag. She'd never fired it at anything more threatening than a bottle, but the weight of it in her palm gave her courage. A horse emerged from the gathering darkness, its rider tall in the saddle. Temperance raised the pistol with shaking hands. "That's far enough, stranger," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. The rider pulled his horse to a stop, raising both hands slowly. "I mean no harm, madam," came a deep voice from beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "Saw your fire from the ridge. Thought you might be in trouble." "I'm managing just fine," Temperance lied, the gun still aimed at the stranger's chest. The man dismounted with fluid grace, keeping his hands visible. As he stepped into the glow of her fire, Temperance could see his face clearly for the first time. Weathered by sun and wind, but handsome in a rugged way, with eyes the color of a summer storm and a strong jawline partially hidden beneath a neatly trimmed beard. "Name's Ronan Blackwood," he said, tipping his hat. "I run cattle about 10 miles east of here. Couldn't help but notice your wagon back there with a broken wheel." Temperance lowered the gun slightly, but kept her finger near the trigger. "Temperance Ward. The wheel split about 4 hours ago." Ronan's eyes scanned their surroundings. "Not the safest place to make camp, Miss Ward. This stretch of prairie has seen its share of trouble lately. Bandits preying on lone travelers." A shiver ran down Temperance's spine. "As I said, I'm managing." Ronan's lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I can see that. But a broken wagon wheel isn't something a person manages alone out here. Not unless you've got tools and skills most don't." Temperance finally lowered the gun completely, exhaustion washing over her. "What do you suggest, Mr. Blackwood?" "The nearest town is 2 days' ride, according to my map. 3, actually. Willow Creek's that way," he said, pointing west, "but the bridge over Rattlesnake Creek washed out last month. You have to go around." He looked at her small camp thoughtfully. "I could help fix your wheel come morning. Got tools at my ranch that would make quick work of it." "And what would this assistance cost me?" Temperance asked warily. She learned quickly that nothing came free in the territories. Ronan's expression hardened. Nothing, madam. Just offering help to someone who needs it. Temperance felt heat rise to her cheeks. Forgive me. I've encountered few acts of kindness on this journey. The cowboy nodded, understanding in his eyes. No forgiveness needed. These lands can harden the softest heart. He glanced around again. I'd feel better if you'd allow me to stay and keep watch tonight. Too many dangers for a woman alone. Temperance hesitated, weighing her limited options. This stranger could be as dangerous as any bandit, yet something in his steady gaze inspired trust she couldn't explain. Very well, she conceded finally. But I'll keep this close, she added, gesturing with a revolver. Ronan smiled, genuine this time. Wise decision, Miss Ward. He moved to his horse, retrieving his own bedroll and a rifle before returning to the fire. As Temperance settled onto her bedroll, Ronan remained standing, scanning the darkness beyond their small circle of light. You should rest, he said quietly. She slept under the stars, the cowboy said. I'll keep watch till morning, and longer still. My father used to say that to my mother whenever we traveled. Said it was a promise between those who care for each other. Temperance felt an unexpected warmth at his words. Did you travel often? Constantly. My father was a restless soul, always chasing the next opportunity. We crossed half the country before I was 15. As Temperance drifted toward sleep, the last thing she saw was Ronan's silhouette against the star-filled sky, rifle resting across his knees, his eyes alert to the darkness beyond. Morning arrived with golden light spreading across the prairie. Temperance woke to the smell of coffee brewing. Ronan crouched by a small fire, his hat pushed back on his head, revealing hair the color of dark honey. Good morning, he said, noticing her stirring. Hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of brewing some coffee with supplies from your wagon. Temperance sat up, smoothing her tangled hair. Thank you. Did you sleep at all? Enough, he replied, pouring coffee into a tin cup and offering it to her. No trouble during the night. As they shared a simple breakfast of hardtack and jerky, Ronan outlined his plan. I'll ride back to my ranch, gather what we need for repairs, and return by midday. Should have you on your way by sunset. Temperance nodded, grateful yet uncertain. I appreciate your help, Mr. Blackwood. Truly. Ronan, he corrected with a smile. Mr. Blackwood was my father, and he was a far more respectable man than I'll ever be. I doubt that, Temperance said before she could stop herself. Ronan's eyes met hers, something unreadable passing between them. Don't be too quick to trust out here, Miss Ward. Even those who seem kind can harbor darkness. Are you warning me against yourself, Ronan? She asked, suddenly bold. He laughed, a rich sound that sent unexpected warmth through her. Perhaps I am. Or perhaps I'm the only honest man you'll meet in these parts. He stood, dusting off his hands. I'll be back before you know it. Keep that revolver handy while I'm gone. True to his word, Ronan returned by midday, his horse pulling a small cart loaded with tools and supplies. He worked methodically on the wagon wheel, his movements efficient and practiced. Temperance watched from beneath the shade of her wagon cover, fascinated by his capability. You've done this before, she observed. Many times, he replied, not looking up from his work. A man who can't fix a wheel out here is a man who won't survive long. And where did you learn such skills? You don't strike me as someone who's always been a cattle rancher. Ronan paused, a shadow crossing his features. I've been many things, Miss Ward. Soldier, scout, freight driver. Landed on ranching because the land doesn't ask questions about your past. His words stirred her curiosity, but Temperance sensed it wasn't the time to press. Instead, she asked, how did you come to own land here? Won it in a card game 5 years ago, he said, resuming his work. Previous owner was eager to head back east. Said the territory was too wild for civilized living. A smile touched his lips. He wasn't wrong. By late afternoon, the wheel was repaired, stronger than before. Ronan helped Temperance repack her wagon and hitch Penny, who seemed refreshed after a day's rest. "You're heading to Willow Creek?" he asked as she prepared to leave. Temperance nodded. "My father purchased land there before we left Boston. A small plot with a cabin, according to the deed." Ronan's expression grew troubled. "Willow Creek's changed in recent months. Mining company moved in, started buying up land. Some say not everyone's selling willingly." A cold feeling settled in Temperance's stomach. "What are you suggesting?" "Just that you should be careful. Land deeds out here aren't always honored the way they should be." He hesitated. "My ranch is on your way. You'd be welcome to stop there tonight, continue to town tomorrow." Roads aren't safe after dark. Temperance considered his offer. Another night of safety before facing whatever awaited her in Willow Creek was tempting. "That's very kind. If you're certain it's no imposition." "No imposition at all," Ronan assured her, mounting his horse. "Follow me. It's about 2 hours' ride from here." The journey to Ronan's ranch passed quickly as Temperance followed his lead across the rolling prairie. The landscape gradually changed, with scattered cottonwoods appearing along a winding creek. Finally, they crested a small rise and Ronan's ranch came into view. It was modest but well-maintained, a sturdy log cabin with a covered porch, a large barn, and several corrals where horses grazed. A small garden plot bordered the cabin, and smoke curled from the stone chimney. "Home," Ronan said simply, leading her down the slope. As they approached, a man emerged from the barn older, with silver hair and a weathered face. He raised a hand in greeting. "That's Samuel," Ronan explained. "Former cavalry scout. Helps me run the place." Samuel approached as they reached the yard. "Brought company, I see," he said, his eyes curious but kind as they took in Temperance. "Miss Temperance Ward," Ronan introduced. "Heading to Willow Creek. Thought she could rest here tonight before continuing." Samuel's expression flickered with the same concern Ronan had shown earlier. "Willow Creek, eh? Well, you're welcome here, Miss Ward." Ronan helped Temperance down from her wagon. "Samuel, could you see to Miss Ward's horse? I'll show her inside." The cabin was simple but comfortable, with a main room containing a table, chairs, and a stone fireplace. A curtain separated what Temperance assumed was Ronan's sleeping area, while a ladder led to a small loft. "It's not much," Ronan said, suddenly seeming self-conscious. "But it's sturdy against the winter winds." "It's lovely," Temperance replied honestly. After months of travel, the cabin felt like a palace. "You can take the loft tonight," Ronan said. "I'll bunk with Samuel in the lean-to behind the barn. Give you some privacy." Temperance was touched by his consideration. "Thank you for everything." Ronan looked away, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Samuel's a decent cook. Better than me, anyway. He'll have supper ready soon." That evening, they ate a hearty stew around Ronan's table, the conversation flowing more easily than Temperance expected. Samuel shared stories of his days scouting for the army, while Ronan spoke of the challenges and rewards of ranching. "And what brings a Boston lady to Montana territory alone?" Samuel finally asked, his tone gentle but curious. Temperance sighed, the familiar ache of loss washing over her. "My mother died last year. Consumption. My father couldn't bear to stay in our home afterward. He heard stories of the West, opportunities for those willing to work hard." She twisted her napkin in her hands. "He purchased land in Willow Creek, sight unseen. We sold everything and started west. He didn't make it. Fever took him 3 weeks ago." The cabin fell silent. Ronan's eyes met hers across the table, filled with a compassion that made her throat tighten. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said quietly. "Losing family is never easy, especially out here where every day demands strength." Samuel cleared his throat. "And you decided to continue to Willow Creek alone?" That takes courage, Miss Ward. Or foolishness, Temperance replied with a sad smile. But I had nowhere to return to. Everything we owned was sold. The land in Willow Creek is all I have left. Ronan exchanged a glance with Samuel.
About that land.
There's something you should know about Willow Creek. Over the next hour, Ronan and Samuel explained how the once peaceful town had changed. The Silver Creek Mining Company had discovered a rich vein 6 months ago and had been aggressively expanding, buying out small landowners, sometimes through intimidation. The law's on their side more often than not, Samuel said grimly. Sheriff Donovan owes his position to company money. Are you saying my father's land could be worthless? Temperance asked, her heart sinking. Not worthless, Ronan replied. But contested, possibly. Depends on where it's located. Temperance retrieved the deed from her bag, spreading it on the table. Ronan studied it carefully, his brow furrowing. This is troubling, he finally said. Your plot sits right where the mining company's been most aggressive. 3 homesteaders have already been forced out from neighboring parcels. Forced out how? Temperance asked, fear creeping into her voice. Ronan hesitated. Water sources mysteriously drying up. Livestock falling ill. Accidents that don't seem accidental. They haven't resorted to outright violence, Samuel added quickly, seeing the alarm on Temperance's face. But they make life impossible until selling becomes the only option. Temperance felt the weight of this new information crushing her hopes. What choice do I have? I can't return east. I have nothing and no one there. Ronan's jaw tightened. You could stay here, he said suddenly, until things settle in Willow Creek. I have the space, and Samuel could use help with the garden. Samuel nodded enthusiastically. Been saying we need a woman's touch around here. Place is too bachelor-like by half. Temperance looked between them, overwhelmed by their offer. I couldn't impose. You've done so much already. It's not an imposition, Ronan insisted. It's practical. Riding into Willow Creek without knowing what you're facing isn't wise. The sincerity in his eyes made Temperance's decision for her. Very well. Just until I can learn more about the situation with my land. Then I'll make a proper decision. That night, lying in the loft of Ronan's cabin, Temperance found herself wondering at the strange turn her journey had taken. She'd expected to be settling into her father's new property by now, not accepting the hospitality of a man she'd met just yesterday. Yet something about Ronan Blackwood made her feel safer than she had since leaving Boston. The following days established a routine that Temperance found surprisingly comfortable. She helped Samuel with the garden and cooking, while Ronan tended to his cattle and made repairs around the ranch. In the evenings, they'd gather for meals, sharing stories and gradually learning more about one another. Temperance discovered that Ronan had fought for the Union during the war, then drifted west afterward, unable to settle back into civilian life back east. Samuel had been a scout for most of his adult life before a leg injury forced him to seek less demanding work. A week passed, then 2. Temperance found herself watching for Ronan's return each evening, enjoying their conversations that often stretched late into the night after Samuel retired to the lean-to. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues, Ronan asked, "Do you miss Boston?" Temperance considered the question. "I miss certain things. The libraries. The concerts. My mother's garden." She looked across the wide expanse of prairie before them. "But there's something about this land that speaks to me. The openness of it. The honesty." Ronan nodded. "It gets in your blood. The territory demands everything from you, but it gives back in ways that are hard to explain to those who haven't lived it." "My father would have loved it here," Temperance said softly. "He always felt confined in the city. He must have been a brave man to set out at his age with a daughter in tow." "He was," Temperance agreed, tears pricking at her eyes. "Foolish sometimes, but brave always." Ronan hesitated, then reached over to cover her hand with his. The touch was brief, but comforting. Tomorrow, I'm riding into Willow Creek for supplies. Thought I might ask around about your land situation. See what I can learn without raising suspicions. Temperance looked at him gratefully. Would you? I've been wondering, but wasn't sure how to approach it. Best you stay here for now. New faces are noticed quickly in town these days. The next day, Temperance found herself watching the horizon anxiously, awaiting Ronan's return. Samuel noticed her distraction as they worked in the garden. He'll be back before sundown, the older man assured her. Ronan knows how to handle himself. I'm just eager for news, Temperance said, embarrassed to be so transparent. Samuel's knowing smile suggested he wasn't fooled. He's a good man, Ronan is. Best I've known. But he carries burdens he doesn't speak of. The war? Temperance guessed. Partly. But there's more he hasn't shared, even with me. Samuel paused his work, leaning on his hoe. Just remember that people out here often have reasons for living so far from civilization. Not all pasts can be easily explained. Before Temperance could ask what he meant, they heard hoofbeats approaching. Ronan rode into the yard, his expression grim. What happened? Temperance asked, hurrying to meet him. Ronan dismounted, his movements stiff with tension. Let's talk inside. Once seated at the table with coffee Samuel quickly prepared, Ronan shared what he'd learned. The mining company claims they purchased your father's land 2 months ago. That's impossible, Temperance gasped. My father would never have sold. And if he had, he would have told me. I believe you, Ronan said. But they've filed papers with the county claiming otherwise. They even produced a bill of sale with what they claim is your father's signature. It must be forged, Temperance insisted. My father died holding that deed, believing the land was our future. Ronan nodded. I suspect so too. But proving it won't be easy. The county recorder is in the company's pocket, same as the sheriff. Then what can I do? That land is all I have left. Ronan exchanged a glance with Samuel. There's a circuit judge due in Willow Creek next month. Judge Hammond. He's known for being fair, even with the big mining operations. If we could get your case before him, with evidence the signature was forged, how would we prove that? Temperance asked. Do you have other documents with your father's signature? Letters, the original purchase agreement. Temperance nodded eagerly. Yes, I have several letters he wrote before we left Boston. And his journal, with daily entries until. She trailed off, the memory of his final days still raw. That might be enough, Ronan said. If we can show the signature on their bill of sale doesn't match his actual writing. We'll need a lawyer, Samuel pointed out. There's Abram Wells in Willow Creek, Ronan replied. He's stood against the mining company before. Paid for it too. They burned his office last year. But he's still practicing. Hope flickered in Temperance's heart. You think he would help me? For the chance to bloody the mining company's nose? I'd wager yes. Samuel cleared his throat. There's still the matter of where Miss Ward stays until the judge arrives. The mining company's already claiming that land. They'd likely have her removed if she tried to settle there. She stays here, Ronan said firmly. If she's willing. Temperance looked between the two men who had become her unexpected allies. I'm willing. And grateful beyond words. That night, after Samuel retired, Temperance found Ronan still sitting by the dying fire, lost in thought. Thank you, she said, sitting across from him. For going to Willow Creek, for learning what you could. Ronan looked up, his eyes reflecting the fire's glow. I wish I'd brought better news. You brought the truth. And hoped that I might still claim what's rightfully mine. She hesitated. Samuel said something today that made me curious. About people having reasons for living far from civilization. Ronan's expression closed slightly. Samuel talks too much sometimes. He cares about you. That's clear. Temperance leaned forward. I've shared my story with you, Ronan. Would you share yours with me? For a long moment, Temperance thought he would refuse. Then, with a deep sigh, Ronan began to speak. After the war, I drifted. Couldn't settle anywhere for long. The things I'd seen done. They followed me. His voice was low, measured. Ended up riding with a freight company out of St. Louis. Good money, dangerous work. On our third run, we were attacked by bandits in Colorado territory. He stared into the fire, as if seeing it play out again. They killed the wagon master before we knew what was happening. The rest of us fought back. In the chaos, I shot a man. Found out later he wasn't a bandit at all, but a young rancher who'd heard the shooting and come to help. Temperance's hand went to her mouth. Oh, Ronan. His name was Daniel Fletcher. 23 years old. Newly married. Ronan's voice had grown hoarse. I tried to turn myself in, but the territorial marshal ruled it a tragic accident during lawful self-defense. Said I was free to go. But you couldn't forgive yourself, Temperance said softly.
No.
I tracked down his widow. Offered her everything I had, which wasn't much. She refused. Said it wouldn't bring him back. Ronan finally looked at Temperance. That's when I headed further north. Wanted to get as far from people as I could. Ended up here. Won this land in that card game I told you about. And found a measure of peace?
Temperance asked. Some.
Enough to sleep most nights. His eyes held hers. But the past is always there, Temperance. It shapes who we become, whether we want it to or not. Temperance reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. The past shapes us, yes. But it doesn't define us. Not unless we allow it to. Ronan looked down at their joined hands. You have a generous heart, Miss Ward. Temperance, she corrected with a small smile. Miss Ward was my mother, and she was a far more proper lady than I'll ever be. For the first time that evening, Ronan smiled. I doubt that. The days that followed brought Temperance and Ronan closer, as they worked side by side on the ranch and planned their approach to the land dispute. Ronan sent word to Abram Wells through a trusted friend, arranging a meeting away from prying eyes in Willow Creek. 2 weeks after Ronan's trip to town, the lawyer arrived at the ranch, a thin, serious man with intelligent eyes and a determined set to his jaw. Miss Ward, he greeted Temperance formally. Mr. Blackwood has explained your situation. I've had my own run-ins with Silver Creek Mining Company, so I'm inclined to help if I can. Over dinner, they discussed strategy. Wells examined the letters and journal Temperance provided, comparing her father's handwriting to a copy of the supposed bill of sale Ronan had obtained. The forgery is obvious to my eye, Wells said, but that may not be enough. The mining company has friends in high places. What more do we need?
Temperance asked.
Wells considered. Witnesses who knew your father, who could testify to his intentions. Anyone who might have seen him in his final days, who could confirm he still believed the land was his. Temperance's heart sank. We traveled alone most of the way. There was a doctor who attended him when he fell ill, at a settlement called Copper Ridge. And the man who helped me bury him, Jeremiah Tucker, I believe his name was. Copper Ridge is 3 days' ride north, Ronan said. I could go, try to find this doctor. And I'll see if Tucker can be located, Wells added. He's known in these parts, does odd jobs, mostly grave digging and such. What about me? Temperance asked. I won't sit idle while others fight my battles. Wells smiled slightly. You, Miss Ward, need to prepare your testimony. Judge Hammond will want to hear directly from you. Your journey, your father's intentions, the circumstances of his death, every detail could matter. That night, after Wells departed with promises to return in a week, Temperance found herself unable to sleep. The possibility of losing her land, her last connection to her father, weighed heavily on her mind. She climbed down from the loft, intending to make tea, and found Ronan sitting at the table, cleaning his revolver by lamplight. Couldn't sleep either, he asked without looking up. Too many thoughts circling, she admitted, putting water on to boil. Mostly wondering if this fight is futile. Ronan set down his gun. Having second thoughts? Not about fighting for what's mine, Temperance clarified, but about what comes after. Even if we win, I'd be a woman alone on a remote homestead. I'm not naive enough to think that would be easy or safe. You could sell the land, Ronan suggested. Not to the mining company, but to someone who'd use it well. Take the money, start fresh somewhere else. Temperance poured her tea, considering his words. Perhaps. But it feels like betraying my father's dream. Dreams change, Ronan said quietly. They have to sometimes when reality shifts beneath our feet. Their eyes met across the table, and Temperance felt a now familiar warmth spread through her chest. In the weeks she'd spent at the ranch, her feelings for Ronan had deepened from gratitude to something far more complex and powerful. If I sold the land, she said carefully, I'd need somewhere to belong. Ronan's expression softened. You've made a place for yourself here. Samuel adores you. The gardens never looked better. And you, Ronan? Temperance asked, her heart pounding. How would you feel if I stayed? The silence stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Finally, Ronan stood and moved around the table to her side. I'd feel like the luckiest man in the territory, he said softly, taking her hands in his. Temperance, I never expected to find someone like you. Never thought I deserved to. Because of your past? She asked. The accident with the rancher? That and other regrets. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. But being with you makes me believe in second chances. In the possibility of redemption. Temperance reached up to touch his face, her fingers gentle against his beard. I believe in second chances too. For both of us. Ronan leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Temperance rose to meet him, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. When they finally parted, Ronan pressed his forehead to hers. Whatever happens with your land, Temperance, you have a place here. With me. If that's what you want. It is, she whispered. More than anything. The following morning, Ronan prepared for his journey to Copper Ridge. Temperance helped him pack supplies, her heart both lighter and heavier after the previous night's revelations. 3 days there, 3 back, Ronan said as he saddled his horse. Longer if it takes time to find the doctor. Be careful, Temperance urged. If the mining company learns what we're doing. They won't, Ronan assured her. Far as anyone knows, I'm just trading for supplies up north. Samuel approached, leading his own horse. I'll ride with him as far as Bitter Creek, then circle back. Make sure no one's following. Temperance felt a rush of gratitude for the old scout's vigilance. Thank you, Samuel. As Ronan mounted his horse, he looked down at Temperance with an intensity that made her breath catch. Wait for me, he said softly. Always, she replied, meaning it with every fiber of her being. The days of Ronan's absence passed slowly for Temperance. She threw herself into ranch work, tending the garden, mending clothes, and helping Samuel with the livestock. At night, she worked on documenting her journey with her father, creating the detailed testimony Wells had requested. Samuel returned the day after departing, confirming that Ronan had set off for Copper Ridge unfollowed. 4 days later, Wells arrived with news. I found Tucker, he announced as Temperance welcomed him into the cabin. He remembers your father clearly says he was lucid until the end, talking about the land he'd bought for you both. He's willing to testify before Judge Hammond. Hope surged in Temperance's heart. That's wonderful news. There's more, Wells continued, his expression grave. The mining company knows someone's asking questions. There was a man in town yesterday, offering rewards for information about you. Fear replaced Temperance's hope. What does that mean for us? It means we need to be careful, Wells replied. Very careful. The company has hired gunsmen who won't hesitate to eliminate problems permanently. Samuel, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. She's safe here. No one comes onto this property without me knowing. Wells nodded.
Good. Keep it that way until the judge arrives.
I'll return in 3 days to collect Miss Ward's written testimony. After the lawyer departed, Temperance found herself jumping at every sound, scanning the horizon constantly for signs of Ronan's return. 6 days had passed since he'd left. He should be returning soon if all had gone well. On the 7th day, as the sun began to set, Samuel suddenly straightened from his work repairing a fence. "Rider coming," he said, his hand moving to the rifle slung across his back. Temperance shaded her eyes, heart pounding as she made out a lone figure approaching. "Is it Ronan?" Samuel squinted. "Can't tell yet. Get inside, just in case." Reluctantly, Temperance retreated to the cabin, watching anxiously through the window as the rider drew nearer. When the figure finally came into clear view, she gasped with relief. "It's him," she cried, rushing back outside. Ronan looked exhausted, dust covering his clothes and face, but he smiled when he saw Temperance running toward him. He dismounted just in time to catch her as she threw herself into his arms.
"I was so worried," she said against his chest.
"Had to take a longer route back," he explained, holding her tight. "Spotted some men who looked like hired guns on the main trail." Samuel approached, taking the reins of Ronan's horse. "Did you find the doctor?" Ronan nodded, finally releasing Temperance, but keeping an arm around her waist. "I did. Dr. Morris remembers Temperance and her father clearly. He's willing to provide a sworn statement that Jacob Ward was of sound mind and still believed he owned the Willow Creek property when he died." "Wells found Tucker too," Temperance said excitedly. "He's agreed to testify." "Then we have a chance," Ronan said, relief evident in his voice. "A real chance." That evening, after Ronan had bathed and eaten, he, Temperance, and Samuel gathered around the table to discuss their next steps. "Judge Hammond arrives in Willow Creek in 10 days, Ronan said. "Wells thinks we should present our case on the 2nd day of court, after the judge has settled in, but before the mining company realizes what we're planning." "And if they find out beforehand?" Samuel asked. Ronan's expression darkened. "They'll try to stop us, one way or another." "The men asking about me in town," Temperance said quietly. "What if they trace me here?" "Then we'll be ready," Ronan replied, his hand finding hers under the table. "I won't let anyone hurt you, Temperance. I promise." The intensity in his eyes left no doubt in her mind that he meant every word. That night, after Samuel retired, Ronan and Temperance sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. "I've been thinking," Ronan said, his voice low, "about what happens after the hearing." Temperance turned to him. "Oh. If you win your case, you'll have choices to make. About the land, about your future." "Our future," Temperance corrected gently. "I meant what I said before you left, Ronan. Whatever happens with the land, I want to be here, with you." Ronan took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I've never wanted anything more in my life. But I need you to be sure. Ranch life isn't easy, especially for someone raised in the city." "I wasn't meant for drawing rooms and social calls," Temperance said with a smile. "I think I've proven that these past weeks." "You've proven yourself stronger than most men I know," Ronan agreed. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "I have something for you. Found it in Copper Ridge." He handed her a small object wrapped in cloth. Temperance unwrapped it carefully to reveal a simple silver ring with a small blue stone. "It's not fancy," Ronan said, suddenly nervous. "Nothing like what you might have had in Boston. But when I saw it, I thought of your eyes." Temperance looked up at him, her heart overflowing. "Are you asking me to marry you, Ronan Blackwood?" "I am," he said solemnly. Not right away, I want to court you proper, give you time to be absolutely certain. But yes, Temperance Ward, I'm asking you to be my wife. To build a life here, together. Tears filled Temperance's eyes as she slipped the ring onto her finger. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Ronan gathered her into his arms, his kiss filled with promise and a future brighter than either of them had dared to hope for just weeks ago. The days leading up to Judge Hammond's arrival passed in a blur of preparation and vigilance. Wells visited twice more, helping Temperance refine her testimony and bringing news from town. The mining company knows something's happening, he reported on his final visit. They've brought in more men. The town's on edge. Will the judge still hear our case? Temperance asked anxiously. Hammond fears no one, Wells assured her. Not even Silver Creek Mining. He'll hear us. The night before they were to depart for Willow Creek, Ronan, Temperance, and Samuel made their final plans over dinner. We'll leave before dawn, Ronan said. Take the back trail into town. Wells has arranged rooms at Mrs. Finch's boarding house. She's no friend of the mining company since they drove her son out of business. I still think Temperance should stay here, Samuel argued. I can testify to what she's told us. Safer that way. Temperance shook her head firmly. I need to speak for myself, Samuel. For my father. I won't hide while others fight my battles. Samuel sighed but nodded in respect. You've got grit, Miss Ward. Your father would be proud. That night, as Temperance prepared for bed in the loft, Ronan called up to her. Temperance? Could you come down for a moment? She descended the ladder to find him standing by the table, a small wooden box in his hands. I want you to have this, he said, opening the box to reveal a revolver, smaller than his own but well-crafted. It was my mother's. She called it her equalizer. Temperance took the gun, testing its weight. It's lighter than my father's. Easier to handle, especially for someone with smaller hands. Ronan watched her examine it. I pray you never need to use it. But if trouble comes. I understand, Temperance said, tucking the weapon into the pocket of her skirt. Thank you. Ronan brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering. Get some rest. Tomorrow will test us all. They left as planned before dawn, taking a circuitous route to Willow Creek that avoided the main roads. By mid-afternoon, they reached the outskirts of town, where Wells waited to guide them to the boarding house. Willow Creek was larger than Temperance had expected, a proper town with a main street lined with businesses, a church steeple visible over the rooftops, and the constant sound of machinery from the mining operations in the hills beyond. Mrs. Finch's boarding house sat on a quiet side street, a two-story building with lace curtains in the windows and a neat garden out front. The proprietress, a stout woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner, showed them to their rooms. Judge arrived yesterday, she informed them in a hushed voice. Mining companies already trying to curry favor sent over a crate of French wine and cigars. Did he accept them? Wells asked anxiously. Mrs. Finch snorted. Hammond? He sent them back with a note saying he doesn't take bribes, not even legal ones. She looked at Temperance with approval. You've got the right judge for your case, dear. That evening, they gathered in Wells' room to review their strategy one final time. The plan was straightforward. Temperance would present her case first thing in the morning, supported by the doctor's sworn statement and Tucker's testimony. The mining company won't know what hit them, Wells said with satisfaction. They're expecting routine cases tomorrow, property disputes between locals, minor criminal matters. What if they've already heard about our plans? Samuel asked, ever the cautious one. Then we'll face them head-on, Ronan replied firmly. Either way, tomorrow Temperance gets her day in court. Later, Ronan walked Temperance to her room. Try to sleep, he advised. You'll need your wits about you tomorrow. I'm not sure I can, she admitted. Everything we've worked for comes down to tomorrow. Ronan took her hands in his. Whatever happens in that courtroom, remember that you're not alone anymore. You have me, Samuel. Wells, people who believe in you and will stand by you. Temperance rose on tiptoe to kiss him gently. That means more than any piece of land ever could. Despite her anxiety, exhaustion claimed Temperance soon after she retired. She woke to early morning light filtering through the curtains and the sounds of the town coming to life outside. After dressing in her best dress, a dark blue calico she'd mended and pressed the day before, Temperance met the others for a quick breakfast in the boarding house dining room. "Ready?" Wells asked as they prepared to leave for the courthouse. Temperance nodded, drawing strength from Ronan's presence beside her. "As I'll ever be." The courthouse stood at the end of Main Street, a sturdy building of red brick with white columns flanking the entrance. As they approached, Temperance noticed several rough-looking men loitering nearby, their eyes tracking their progress. "Mining company men," Wells murmured. "Look confident. Don't show fear." Inside, the courtroom was already filling with locals there for their own cases. At the front, a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard sat behind an imposing desk. Judge Hammond, Temperance presumed. Wells led them to seats near the front, then approached the clerk to ensure their case would be heard. He returned looking satisfied. "We're second on the docket," he reported. "Perfect timing." As they waited, Temperance became aware of a commotion at the back of the courtroom. A group of well-dressed men entered, led by a corpulent figure with a gold watch chain stretched across his vest. "Edgar Beaumont," Wells whispered, "president of Silver Creek Mining. And those with him are the company lawyers." Beaumont's gaze swept the room, stopping when it landed on their group. His eyes narrowed as he leaned to whisper to one of his companions. "They know," Ronan said quietly. "Be ready." The first case, a dispute over cattle grazing rights, was dispatched quickly by the judge, who displayed a no-nonsense approach and a keen understanding of territorial law. When the clerk called Ward versus Silver Creek Mining Company, a murmur ran through the courtroom. Beaumont and his lawyers looked startled, clearly caught off guard despite their earlier recognition of Temperance's party. Temperance approached the front with Wells, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. Judge Hammond looked at her with interest. "Miss Ward," Wells began, "claims ownership of a parcel of land currently being occupied by Silver Creek Mining Company. She contends that the company's claim to have purchased this land from her late father is fraudulent, and that the bill of sale they've filed with the county is a forgery." One of Beaumont's lawyers jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is the first we're hearing of this case. We request time to prepare a proper response." Judge Hammond fixed the lawyer with a stern gaze. "Mr. Caldwell, your client filed the deed in question months ago. Surely you're prepared to defend its legitimacy." "Of course, Your Honor, but then we'll proceed," Hammond cut him off. "Miss Ward, please approach and tell me your story." For the next hour, Temperance laid out her case: her father's purchase of the land, their journey west, his illness and death, and her discovery upon arriving that the mining company claimed ownership. Tucker testified next, confirming that Jacob Ward had spoken of the land as his own property until his dying breath. Wells presented the doctor's sworn statement affirming the same, along with examples of Jacob Ward's genuine signature that clearly differed from the one on the mining company's bill of sale. Throughout, Beaumont and his lawyers grew increasingly agitated, whispering urgently among themselves. When it was their turn to respond, their arguments seemed weak and hastily constructed. "The company acted in good faith, Your Honor," Caldwell insisted. "If there was any irregularity in the purchase, it was unknown to my client." Judge Hammond's expression made it clear he wasn't convinced. "I'll need to review all documents and consider this matter carefully," he announced. "Court will recess until 2 o'clock, at which time I'll deliver my ruling." As they filed out of the courtroom, Temperance felt both hopeful and terrified. "What do you think?" she asked Wells. Hammond saw through their lies. The lawyer replied confidently, "I'd be shocked if he rules against us." They decided to wait out the recess at a small cafe across from the courthouse, away from the mining company representatives who lingered on the courthouse steps. They had just received their food when the cafe door burst open and Mrs. Finch rushed in, her face flushed with exertion. "They're coming for you," she gasped. "Beaumont's men, I overheard them planning. They mean to ensure Miss Ward doesn't return for the judge's ruling." Ronan was on his feet instantly. "How many?" "5, maybe 6, Mrs. Finch replied. "Armed. They were heading this way." Samuel moved to the window, peering cautiously outside. Too late. They're across the street, spreading out. Ronan turned to Temperance, his expression grave. "We need to get you back to the courthouse. Hammond will have a deputy there. You'll be safe until the ruling."
"How?"
Temperance asked, her mouth dry with fear. "They're between us and the courthouse." "Back door," Mrs. Finch said quickly. "Through the kitchen, then the alley. It loops around to the side of the courthouse." Wells nodded. "I know that route. I'll take Temperance. You two create a distraction." Ronan hesitated, clearly reluctant to let Temperance out of his sight. "Be careful," he finally said, squeezing her hand. "I'll see you in the courtroom." "What about you?" she asked anxiously. "We'll be right behind you," he promised. "Samuel and I have faced worse odds." There was no time for further discussion. Wells led Temperance through the kitchen while Ronan and Samuel prepared to draw the mining company men away. The alley behind the cafe was narrow and smelled of garbage, but Wells moved confidently, guiding Temperance through a series of turns. They had almost reached the side entrance of the courthouse when a figure stepped out from a doorway, blocking their path. Well, the man drawled, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. "Miss Ward, I presume?" Wells pushed Temperance behind him. "Stand aside. This woman is due in court." "I don't think so," the man replied, drawing his gun. "Mr. Beaumont wants a word with her first." What happened next unfolded in a blur. Temperance reached into her pocket for Ronan's mother's revolver just as a shot rang out from behind them. The man before them jerked, his gun discharging harmlessly into the ground as he crumpled. Temperance whirled to see Ronan at the mouth of the alley, his smoking gun still raised. "Go," he shouted. "Get to the courthouse now." Wells grabbed Temperance's arm, pulling her toward the courthouse entrance. As they reached the door, she looked back to see Ronan engaged in a struggle with another of Beaumont's men, while more gunshots echoed from the direction of the cafe. Inside the courthouse, a deputy responded immediately to the commotion, rushing outside with his gun drawn while another escorted Temperance and Wells to the courtroom. Judge Hammond was already at his bench, his expression thunderous as he took in Temperance's disheveled appearance and the sounds of conflict outside. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Beaumont's men, Your Honor," Wells explained breathlessly. "They attempted to prevent Miss Ward from returning for your ruling." Hammond's face darkened further. "Where is Mr. Beaumont?" As if summoned, the mining company president appeared in the doorway, his lawyers trailing behind him. He froze at the judge's glare. "Mr. Beaumont," Hammond said, his voice cold as steel. "I was about to deliver my ruling on the Ward case. How fortunate you arrived in time to hear it, particularly given the disturbance outside that appears to involve men in your employ." Beaumont began to protest, but Hammond silenced him with a raised hand. "I have reviewed all evidence in this matter," the judge continued. "It is my finding that the bill of sale presented by Silver Creek Mining Company is indeed a forgery. The signature purporting to be that of Jacob Ward bears no resemblance to his verified handwriting." Relief washed over Temperance, even as her concern for Ronan and Samuel continued to gnaw at her. "Furthermore," Hammond continued, "I find the company's actions in this matter to be not merely negligent, but deliberately fraudulent. The deed to the property in question is hereby confirmed as belonging to Miss Temperance Ward, as her father's sole heir." Beaumont's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. "This is outrageous." "We'll appeal." "You'll do nothing of the sort," Hammond cut him off. unless you wish me to order a full investigation into your company's land acquisition practices throughout the territory. I suspect this is not the only fraudulent deed in your possession." The threat had its intended effect. Beaumont deflated visibly, his bluster replaced by calculation. "Additionally," Hammond continued, "I am ordering Silver Creek Mining Company to pay damages to Miss Ward in the amount of $500 for their illegal occupation of her property and attempted intimidation." Temperance could scarcely believe what she was hearing. Not only had she regained her father's land, but she would receive compensation that would allow her to build a proper home there if she chose. As Hammond concluded the proceedings, the doors of the courtroom burst open. Temperance turned to see Ronan and Samuel enter, both disheveled but apparently unharmed. The sight of them safe sent a wave of relief through her so powerful she nearly collapsed. Ronan's eyes found hers immediately, questioning. She nodded, a smile breaking across her face. His answering smile was like sunshine after a storm. Later, at Mrs. Finch's boarding house, they gathered to celebrate their victory. The confrontation in town had ended with 3 of Beaumont's men arrested and the others fleeing once the sheriff responding to the gunfire had arrived. "The mining company won't trouble you again," Wells assured Temperance. Hammond's threat of a wider investigation was no bluff. "Beaumont has too much to lose to risk it. What will you do now?" Samuel asked Temperance. "Build on your land?" Temperance looked at Ronan, who had barely left her side since the courthouse. "Actually, I've been thinking. That land was my father's dream, not mine." "Oh." Wells raised an eyebrow. "I've found my own dream," she continued, her hand finding Ronan's. "A ranch with good people, where I feel I belong." Ronan's arm slipped around her waist. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I'd like to sell the Willow Creek property," Temperance replied. "To someone who'll use it well, not the mining company. Use the money and the damages to help expand your ranch." "Our ranch." Samuel beamed at them both. "About time you made an honest woman of her, Ronan." Ronan laughed, pulling Temperance closer. "I intend to, old friend. Just as soon as she's ready." "I'm ready now," Temperance said softly. "I've never been more certain of anything." 3 weeks later, on a perfect autumn afternoon, Temperance Ward became Temperance Blackwood in a simple ceremony at their ranch. Judge Hammond himself rode out to perform the service, with Samuel, Wells, Mrs. Finch, and a few neighboring ranchers in attendance. As the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Temperance looked up at Ronan and saw in his eyes all the love and promise of their future together. That night, as they sat on the porch of what was now their shared home, Ronan wrapped a blanket around Temperance's shoulders against the evening chill. "Happy?" he asked, pulling her close. "Completely," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Though I still can't believe how much has changed in such a short time. 2 months ago, I was alone with a broken wagon, sleeping under the stars." Ronan smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "And a cowboy said, 'I'll keep watch till morning, and longer still.'" "You've kept that promise," Temperance said softly. "And I always will," Ronan vowed. "For all the mornings of our lives." As stars appeared in the vast Montana sky, Temperance knew that she had found not just a home, but a love that would sustain her through whatever challenges the future might bring. The land that had seemed so harsh and unforgiving when she first arrived now felt like exactly where she was meant to be, beside the man who had taught her that second chances were possible, and that even in the wild territory of Montana, love could flourish like wildflowers after spring rain. In the years that followed, the Blackwood Ranch prospered. Temperance and Ronan welcomed a daughter the following summer, a strong-willed girl with her mother's honey-blonde hair and her father's storm-gray eyes. They named her Hope for what had brought them together and sustained them through their trials. 2 years later, twin boys joined the family, keeping the ranch filled with laughter and the constant energy of young lives flourishing in the freedom of the territory. Willow Creek eventually became a proper town, growing beyond its mining roots as settlers continued to arrive from the east. The Silver Creek Mining Company's influence waned after Judge Hammond ordered that wider investigation, revealing numerous fraudulent land claims that had to be returned to their rightful owners. Samuel remained with them, becoming Uncle Samuel to the children and an indispensable part of their family. In his later years, he took to telling elaborate stories of his scouting days, embellished for young ears but containing enough truth to connect the children to the wild history of the land they called home. On warm summer nights, the family often slept outside under the vast canopy of stars, just as Temperance had done on that fateful night when a stranger on horseback had appeared and changed the course of her life forever. And each time, as the children drifted to sleep, Ronan would whisper to Temperance the words that had become their promise to each other. "I'll keep watch till morning, and longer still." In those moments, with her family safe around her and the man she loved by her side, Temperance knew that some journeys, no matter how difficult their beginning, led exactly where they were meant to home.